Hello, my name's Lizzie. I'm Anglican. In just under 5 weeks' time, I'm going to be moving into a convent ready to become a postulant. I suddenly started crying just now while sorting through all my box files, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to stop and record like how I'm feeling or explain why I'm crying because it's a subject that I was going to make a few videos about anyway over the next day or next week or something, but I was going to make some videos on this subject very soon anyway. So here's a video on kind of what I think I'll find hardest about this transition into of leaving my present life and moving into a religious community. I will hold your people in my heart. I was planning on doing a video soon entitled like what do I think I'll find most difficult. So in the back of my mind I've been kind of wondering what my answer to that would be. And the few things that I think I would kind of definitely most find difficult are, for a start, just that the vows are quite extreme things anyway. So to live in poverty and to live under obedience, like to vow to live under obedience and celibacy are all like difficult things anyway. So that's kind of like a given that they're not like easy things to commit to. And like losing, I've mentioned this in another video, but just the whole thing of losing your autonomy and no longer be able to make like so many choices about your life and having to fit into how a community chooses to live and chooses to do things. Like obviously that will be difficult. And the other kind of most obvious thing would be that when you're used to being like quite, what's the word, like proficient at things you do in the area of life that you were in before you moved into religious life, there's suddenly a contrast that once you're in this new setting of a religious community, you're kind of like, it's a bit like being like on your first year at primary school or something. You've gone from being like maybe like head or really good at what you used to do maybe, and then suddenly you're in a setting where you're the beginner and you're not doing things right, and you're constantly learning, and you're being told you're not doing things right, or you're getting things wrong, and you feel maybe like incompetent, as well as just like the frustration of being in that kind of new learning position. And I know like all the sisters that I've spoken to, that they all had to go through that. Some of them were like very competent teachers, or were really quite high up, or just very good in their line of work before they moved into religious life. So those are the three things that kind of are all quite kind of obvious things that I know would be difficult, and that I know that all the sisters have gone through like that journey. But for me personally, when I've read other people's accounts of becoming nuns, like a lot of people have said that giving up the ability to get married or to have children was probably their biggest thing that they had to give up, if that makes sense. Whereas for me personally, I've always felt, or for ages I felt, that wasn't my vocation. But for me personally, what I feel like is going to be the most difficult thing, or even was while I was alongside her, is the whole thing of having to like give up the things that people feel I'm good at, or the things I'm used to doing, like my hobbies or my gifts, or those kinds of things. And I had some conversations with the sisters about that subject, and I'll talk about the subject more in a different video. But I realised that I'd have to put my, let's say, gifts, that like things that God has like put in me as part of my personality, or things that I do, or that turn out well when I try them, or stuff like that. I've realised that you have to just put those things into storage in God's hands, as it were. So it's weird. I've been going through all my box files, like just looking at stuff from the past, and I've not forgotten, but it's quite overwhelming how many different things I do, or different things that I've done in the past that I've been told I'm good at. So the more I'm aware of those things, the more I realise I'm having to like put into God's hands, into storage. So there's obviously, like when I was training to be a priest, that there was all those kinds of things that people said I seemed quite like natural at, or that God had given me gifts in, things like preaching. I'm not a very good, I'm really quite rubbish at speaking on the spot, as you've probably noticed, but things like preaching and designing services, leading services, those kinds of things, I've had to put into storage anyway the last few years. And putting things into storage has been a kind of a theme that I felt God speaking to me about over the last 8 or so years anyway, because it's like God's been taking me in this direction, and that was something else I wanted to mention in a different video. But so there's all that side of things. But looking through these box files, I've got poems I've written, songs I've written, music I've written. I used to be resident composer at school. I used to write little, not quite film scores, but a bit like that for the school plays, for like a small orchestra, and I've written for string quartets and voices and things. I've probably got something here I can show. Oh, here we go. So I'd write things that I end up looking like. This is something I wrote. So writing music, I've found art that I've done before, and even I'm not really very good like with paintbrushes and things, but I like thinking up concepts. And just a few months ago, someone just discovered some pictures I'd made for fun, and it got turned into an art exhibition. So there's kind of I like doing creative things. So, and all these different things that I do, and also going back to the music, I used to be a choral scholar, so I used to sing in like 12 of us or 16 of us would sing in cathedrals, and then I've been asked to sing in like weddings and funerals and help record CDs and things. So there's all these different parts of me, none of which I can see me being able to kind of use it in that, at least in the time, for the time being, in religious life, in the context I'm going into. Not that it's about I've got these gifts, therefore I've got to find a way of using them, because that's not the right way around of looking at it. But it's just, at the moment, I just feel quite overwhelmed by the amount that I'm going to have to put into storage in God's hands. I don't know if I'm making much sense. Like, it's quite often people say, "Oh, you're really talented," or "You're talented like at lots of different things." Which, for a start, if God's given you gifts for things, you can't really take the credit for it, because if God made you born with the ability to sing or to write this and that, that's more like what God's put in you, not that you can take the credit for it. But that obviously it's meant as a compliment or a positive thing, but it can be a burden or a difficult thing too, because then the more gifts you have, the more open you are to feeling like frustrated that you can't use them. So I think that was kind of mainly what I was trying to explain. But I've said this to the community already when they were asking me what I thought I would find most difficult, and it definitely is that there are so many different sides of me, or things that I do, or things that I've done in the past that people have said were good, or that they've said, oh, you're gifted in that. And all these things I'm going to have to like say goodbye to, not knowing if, like, when, or even if ever God's going to find ways of me using them in a religious life context. This is a whole topic that I've been thinking about recently, but actually that I feel like God's been leading me down for years, and I'll do some other videos like explaining that a bit more, because this is very much what God's been doing in my life over a number of years, like taking someone from being like top of the class at this, or kind of getting scholarships and being in, like, getting like A grades in various things, taking someone that's had that kind of background and take him on the journey where they kind of get a job as a cleaner and learn to be hidden, and learn to be happy, like being nothing, like not in a bad nothing, like knowing that God's looking at you and God loves you, but in the way that Catherine of Siena felt God say to her, you are she who is not, I am he who is. This is a whole journey that God's been taking me down. I guess this next level is the next level of this theme that God's been taking me down for several years already. For years and years, I was in a context where it was good to try to like excel, and people would say, oh you excelled at that, or you or I'd win this, or I'd get given this prize, or I'd just be told like you had like really good reports, or this is the best report we've read, and all of that kind of top stuff. And I felt God trying to get me away from that whole mentality and that whole world. And so I felt that God, that the Christian maturity is the opposite of all of that. That actually, rather than trying to assert yourself and look good or have people be impressed with you, Christian maturity is about learning to not stand out, and to actually blend in, and to blend into a community. So I can see how, for me to progress in a spiritual way, God would maybe want to put me into the context of a religious community, because that's the best way of learning how to blend in and not stick out and not be impressive. And linked to that, also going back to this theme of hiddenness that I'll definitely do another video about, because that's been a massive theme. I felt like God also wants me, or wants all of us, to learn to actually just allow our lives to be hidden in Jesus, and to actually, the more you mature as a Christian, the more you're happy like to die to yourself and even disappear to yourself, and just like disappear into Jesus. So this is like a long kind of, I've talked about the kind of discernment or vocation journey I've been on, but on the inside, these kinds of themes are the more like spiritual journey that God's been taking me down over several years.